want you to think of something for a moment. When I ask you to think of a famous battle or a famous engagement in the Indian Wars in the Old West, what's the first one that comes to mind? Now, there are plenty to choose from, but my guess is the first one that came to mind is close to where I am right now at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Right now we are in Montana, and this is going to be my first time going to the site of the Battle of Little Bighorn, where Custer and the 7th Cavalry had their famous last stand. And I'm going to be tagging along with some people today who know a little bit about warfare and know a little bit about leadership, and are taking some people around to extract some of the lessons from Custer and the 7th Cavalry and the Native Americans who fought here in 1876. And I'm going to guess that you'll probably recognize the ones that I'm with when they come around. So right now, I'm actually not at Little Bighorn. As a matter of fact, I'm about 25 miles east of the Little Bighorn battlefield, but I wanted to start out here to give a little bit of context as to what's happening leading up to the Battle of Little Bighorn. So it's 1876. The U.S. government has declared that the Native Americans here in this part of the United States need to be relocated to reservations. But Sitting Bull and a large group of mixed tribes have declared that they aren't going anywhere. So the U.S. government dispatches 3 different columns that are going to be converging on this area to try and subdue the Native Americans. From the east, you're going to have General Terry, which is going to include Custer and the 7th Cavalry, with the Dakota column. They are going to be moving to the west. In the west, coming to the east, is the Montana column under Gibbon, who had fought at Gettysburg, as did Custer. And then from the south is the Wyoming column, coming to the north under the leadership of Crook. And these 3 are coming together to try and put a pinch on Sitting Bull and the rest of the Native Americans. I am currently standing just outside of the town of Busby, Montana. And in late June of 1876, again, as we've already talked about, you have the Dakota column and the Montana column and the Wyoming column that are all converging to try and find Sitting Bull and these Native Americans who are refusing to go to the reservation. And this is to the north right here. If we were to follow the Rosebud Creek down, eventually it would dump into the Yellowstone River. Well, Custer and the 7th Cavalry are going to be coming up the Rosebud, and the written orders that Terry had for Custer were for him to go all the way up the Rosebud and then to cut over to the Little Bighorn. Meanwhile, Gibbon and the Montana column would be going up the Yellowstone River until they got to the confluence with the Bighorn River, and then the 2 were supposed to start converging to see if they could trap Sitting Bull in between them. Well, right here around this area, Custer's scouts find evidence of Sitting Bull's camp, and Terry had given some implications that if he finds some sign, well, he could diverge from his orders and go ahead and chase down the camp. So Custer is going to diverge away from Rosebud Creek right here in this area, and he is going to start heading west, chasing down Sitting Bull. And this area right here on June 24th is where Custer would have his last camp. As a matter of fact, there's a little store here called Custer's Last Camp. All right, we're gonna jump back in the vehicle and start moving west and following Custer and the 7th Cavalry to their doom at Little Bighorn. And I mentioned that I'm tagging along with a group today. We are with the Echelon Front team with their Battlefield Review program. So Echelon Front, in short, if you don't know, is a business and leadership consulting company that was started by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. These are two men who are retired Navy SEALs. They were with SEAL Team 3, fought in the Battle of Ramadi, and are taking the lessons that they learned on the battlefield and then applying them to business and life in general. Wrote a book called Extreme Ownership and followed it up with The Dichotomy of Leadership. Excellent books. And our battlefield guide is another JD. JD Baker is going to be leading us today. So it's something about JDs and being into history. We'll call him the smart JD though. But anyway, we're gonna start making our way towards Little Bighorn. All right, we have left Custer's last encampment and have frankly driven a long way to get to where I am standing right now. If you look behind me, this mountain range back here is the Wolf Mountains, and we'll come back to how that comes into play here in just a moment. But first I want to talk a little bit more about the 7th Cavalry. This is about as toxic of a group as you can possibly imagine. And there are three principal characters in the 7th Cavalry that I want to talk about. First is Custer. Obviously, as people know, Custer has an ego that really just cannot be contained, and he's a bit of a glory hound. Beneath him is a guy by the name of Marcus Reno. Marcus Reno and Custer do not get along at all. This is not a good relationship between these two men. And then below that is a guy named Frederick Benteen. And Benteen and Custer don't get along. There had been a battle that they were both involved in called the Battle of the Washita. And Custer had not, according to Benteen, not offered proper support to one of his friends. The guy ended up dying. And then Benteen wrote an anonymous letter to a newspaper that essentially trashed Custer and accused him of dereliction of duty. And then Custer found out about it, and these two men just hated each other. On top of that, Benteen and Reno didn't like each other either. So this is really a dysfunctional group that is making their way to the Little Bighorn. Now, again, as I was mentioning earlier, we are looking at the Wolf Mountain Range. And on June 24th, the 7th Cavalry would have been on the other side of this mountain range. So we are facing east right now. So the 24th, a guy by the name of Varnum, who was a lieutenant in the 7th Cavalry, gets sent up to that highest peak that we can see there in front of us with some Crow scouts. This becomes known as the Crow's Nest. And Varnum can't see anything, but the Crow scouts look to the west, and they can see this massive herd of horses in the distance. Varnum can't see them at all, but it is indicative of a very large Indian village. So word gets back to Custer, and he decides that on the night of the 25th, they're going to do on the night of the 24th, they're going to do a night march, and they're going to come through right about where you can see there where that little V notch is. So the night of the 24th, around 11 o'clock, I think, they're going to pull up stakes and head out, do some reconnaissance on the 25th with the intention of attacking the camp on the 26th. Now, in addition to the problems with this toxic relationship in the leadership of the 7th Cavalry, these guys have some other problems that they are dealing with. For one, their horses are underfed and weak. Marcus Reno had led a scouting mission down the Rosebud shortly before this engagement. So the horses were already tired from that. They didn't bring enough food with them to feed the horses, and they are following these Native Americans. Wherever the Native Americans go, they have this huge pony herd, and they've already ate all the grass. But there are some other issues that are really causing things to unravel right around here. So again, we have Varnum and our Crow Scouts over at the Crow's Nest. They can see this large Indian encampment to the west, which has only grown larger after the Native American victory at the Battle of the Rosebud, which these guys didn't even know about because Crook hadn't sent any messages to let them know what was going on. And you can look and see how open this country is and how far you can really see. Well, Varnum and his party spot two Indians in the distance, and they are moving to the east. So I'm facing north right now, so they're moving from left to right. The young boy, his name was Deeds, and if I remember correctly, they had lost a horse that they were looking for. They also see 6 Sioux to the north, who are moving to the west. And one of the troopers in the 7th Cavalry, again, they're still over on the other side of the mountains at this point, had forgot something. So he went back to retrieve whatever it was that he had forgot, and there were some Cheyenne who were coming in to join up with Sitting Bull's camp that were going through, some of the things that had fallen off of a pack mule. I think it was like a box of rations or something. So now the element of surprise is gone. And that's going to make Custer panic, because the thing that he is afraid of the most is that Sitting Bull and this Native American encampment are going to slip away from him. And if they get away, well, there goes all of the glory. So on the morning of the 25th, again, the 7th Cavalry is on the east side of the Wolf Mountains. Custer is wanting to get things up and get moving to keep, Sitting Bull from slipping through his grasp. So around 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, I've seen different accounts. They get up, they move through a pass right back here behind me, and they come up right about to where I am now. And Custer makes really what might be the first in a series of really bad mistakes. He decides that he is going to split his force. So he's going to have Benteen take 3 companies and do this little jaunt to the south to see if there are any extra, little villages that are hanging around. Probably did that because he didn't like Benteen. Benteen protested. He said, hey, we don't know how big this village is. Or at least that's what it's reported that he said. And Custer said, you have your orders, go. Oddly enough, if Benteen hadn't burned those bridges earlier, maybe he could have had some more influence over Custer. So now you have these weak horses and these tired men who are about to march forward into the worst day of their life. We've moved a little further to the west, and we are overlooking Reno Creek. So again, Custer has already split his command once. Benteen is off on this little side mission to see if he can find any stray Indian villages. Benteen was not happy about this. He thought it was a waste of time. He'd already been put in the back towards the pack train where it was dusty and nasty, so he thought he was being punished by Custer, which may very well be true. In actuality, even though Custer didn't know it, he probably ended up saving Benteen's life by, kind of shoving him to the back. But anyway, right down here is Reno Creek, or what is now known as Reno Creek. And as Custer and his command are moving west here in this direction, he's going to split them up again. Reno is going to take companies A, G, and M. They're going to be on the left side of the creek, and Custer is going to take the remaining 5 companies, and they're going to be on the right side of the creek. And somewhere down in here, we don't know just exactly where. I've also heard people say it's a little bit further east from where I am right now, or further west from where I am right now. They find what's called the lone teepee. There were actually 2 teepees. One was still standing and one was collapsed. And inside is a dead warrior who had probably been mortally wounded at the Battle of the Rosebud. So anyway, there's all kinds of sign. They know they're getting close, and Custer is getting impatient and wants to make something happen before this village of Sitting Bull slips away. All right, we're going to lash up with JD and Jocko and get a little bit more insight as to what's going on here and what can be learned.
I was just on a panel with some senior military folks, and we started getting asked questions about China, and if Taiwan, or if China went into Taiwan, what would we be thinking about? And they were kind of asking us, from our level, from our experience, what would we be thinking about? And so, the guys went down the line, and guys were saying, well, I'd be thinking about our logistics and our resupply and this kind of thing. And someone else was like, well, I'd think this is our first near-peer opponent that we're going to be facing, so this could be an issue, and here's their weaponry, their technologies, some of it's equivalent of ours. And so they gave a lot of answers like this, and they got to me, and I said, the thing that I would be focused on if I was to be going to run missions in Taiwan to go and try and win Taiwan back from a Chinese invasion is I would be focused on keeping an open mind. That's what I would be focused on. That would be my focus. That is always going to be my focus. When we went into the Battle of Ramadi, my mind when I went in there was saying, okay, what's going on here, keeping an open mind? How can I keep my mind open? What we've been doing, how has it been working? Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. What about the enemy? And what triggered me to think about that was when JD mentioned these preset ideas. As Custer is getting briefed, he's already got preset ideas of what he's going to do. He already has his mind kind of made up. The scouts come in and tell him, hey, there's 10 million freaking horses over there, and this is probably a bunch of bad guys that we should watch out for. And he's like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. He's got preset ideas. The other thing, pattern recognition. We want to get pattern recognition in life, right? When we see a little problem, it starts to, oh, I've seen that before, I can handle it. That's cool, that's great. But guess what? It can throw you off. Classic case. Hey, I've been fighting Indians for the last 7 years. Every time we attack them, they run away. So that's my pattern recognition. Oh, I see there's another Indian encampment. We're going to attack it. They're going to run away. You got to be careful. You got to keep an open mind. And you should focus on keeping an open mind. Another thing, this is a classic perspective scenario that we talked about, right? There's freaking 2,000 or more Indians over that hill right there. But we think there's 100 or 200 or 300. They have 10 times what we think. And you know what? We can't see them from this perspective. That's why I was talking about yesterday, when we look at a target, we want to see it from every single perspective that we possibly can. I would never commit forces to go attack a blind spot like that ever. And yet here's this experienced guy running down there, committing forces to it. So when you are going to make some kind of a decision, ask questions of everybody that's involved and find out what's going on.
It's really easy to come out here and be like, Custer got some information. It was a huge, bunch of 2,000 warriors, and that was stupid. And he rode down there, and that was dumb. And he got his guys killed. That's actually not what happened. I mean, he can't even talk directly to his Arikara and Crow scouts. He's got to talk to an interpreter or sign language. So I don't think it wasn't even close to being as clear as that. And I think if Custer knew what the outcome was going to be, almost certainly he would not have done that. He certainly would not have done that. So when we're here on the battlefield, you got to keep an open mind. To Jocko's point, you got to keep an open mind and think about, how does this apply to us? And we see this a lot in certain industries. Construction or energy, where you got a major fatality or a injury, a safety incident happens. And what do you hear from people in the ranks, or in other departments or other divisions or maybe other job sites? You can't fix stupid. Can't fix stupid. Instead of actually looking at that and saying like, hey, what happened over there? What lessons can we extract and learn from that? How can we actually apply this so we make sure that doesn't happen on our job site? Because if it happened to them, it absolutely can happen here. And so don't get reeled into that temptation. Our own ego likes to do that we might have done something radically different if we were in Custer's position. So keep an open mind and think about how often we have some preset ideas, and yet we're not listening to the feedback from other people. We make some assumptions that prove to be false, and we're not actually making adjustments to our plan. And then when you keep that open mind, you're gonna be able to extract a lot more lessons from your time here on the battlefield today and tomorrow as we talk about this stuff.
So again, as Custer is closing in on the village, Benteen and 3 companies have broken off from the 7th Cavalry, and then Custer is going to divide his force again. He and the 5 companies that he's with are going to stay on the right. They're going to get up on the high ground above the Little Bighorn and above the village. Reno and his 3 companies, AG and M, are going to go on down, and then they're going to cross the Little Bighorn, and they're going to move up on the Indian village from the south with the idea that it's going to be kind of like a hammer and anvil. They're going to be the hammer. They're going to push the Native American village. Custer is going to circle around from the north, and they're going to kind of like catch them in a vice and crush them. What Reno didn't know when he crossed the Little Bighorn, though, is that he had just entered into the Valley of Death.